A half dozen Republicans are now running for the party's presidential nomination, and that number could more than double by summer. A lot of GOP heavy hitters attending the Southern Republican Leadership Conference, an early indicator of Southern primary voter support. Ohio Governor John Kasich is among those considering a bid for the nomination.
What I'm concerned about is, can I win, and will I have the resources and the organization? And we're in the process of determining that. And let me tell you again that I'm very optimistic about where we're headed.
Well, Fox News contributor Julie Roginsky was a political advisor to New Jersey Senator Frank Lautenberg, and David Avella is the chairman of GOPAC, a Republican training organization. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Happy Memorial Day.
Thank you, and same to you. So we have a new poll from the Southern Republican Leadership Conference, and let's take a look at it. Dr. Ben Carson in the lead. Julie, what do you say about him?
Well, I think it's early, and let me just pause for a second and echo David, happy Memorial Day, and thank you to everybody who's watching, who served, and certainly to the family of those who fell. Look, Ben Carson, I think, is the Rick Santorum, perhaps, of this cycle, where you're going to see a boomlet right now, but these things are fairly meaningless right now, and it's going to be it's going to be determined by who's got the infrastructure, who's got the across-the-party support, and I don't see Ben Carson doing it. I think somebody like a Jeb Bush, a Marco Rubio, certainly a Scott Walker is going to be there for the long haul. Ben Carson, I think, is introducing some elements into the race that appeal to the same segments that Rick Santorum used to appeal to 4 years ago, certainly appeal to segments that like Ted Cruz, but I certainly don't see him going the distance at this point.
David, what do you say about Carson?
Well, let me first say, Julie, I was at I spoke at the Southern Republican Leadership Conference. I was going to vote absentee in the straw poll for you, but so many good candidates, I didn't know which one to pick for you.
Well, you have my proxy, whatever you want.
Look, certainly Ben Carson is looking for any way to get some momentum, but these straw polls have never been an indicator of who our party's going to be. Patti, I would tell you the person who most likely will be our nominee is the candidate who can win 2 of the first 3 contests between New Hampshire, Iowa, and South Carolina. In modern history, we haven't nominated someone who hasn't won 2 of those first 3, because the momentum it gives you is so much harder makes it so much harder for the challengers than to get momentum. And then as we start going into the Southern primaries, it really does give our potential nominee, the chance to wrap it up if they can get those 2 victories in those first 3 states.
All right, let's size up some of the other candidates now. We saw John Kasich at the start of the segment. Julie, what about him?
Look, I like John Kasich. I know John Kasich. I think he's a very strong candidate, but time is elapsing, and I think partially time is elapsing because of this new rule that's been established in part by Fox News with the debates coming up in August. Only the top 10 will be in the debate, and I think that's a trajectory to gain the momentum that David talked about going into next winter. So if Kasich's going to go for it, he should go pull the trigger now, or not pull the trigger now. But time is elapsing for Kasich. It's not what it was a decade ago. You have to get in. You have to get in now.
David?
Kasich could be a contender, and he will be in sooner rather than later. He has signed up Chris Sununu out of New Hampshire, and the Sununu family is very politically savvy. If he were not getting in the race, Chris Sununu would not be signing up with him. And he has a record that proves the Republican belief that if you keep taxes low and you keep spending under control, you're going to have more money in government coffers to do things to help those less fortunate. Now, John Kasich's challenge is going to be, which dates back to his days in Congress, which is, if you don't agree with him, he is so forceful in making his argument that some think that they are being attacked. And so he's going to have to figure out a way to soften that edge, which he's done twice, being elected and re-elected as governor of Ohio. So he can do it, certainly,
Ohio.
But Julie's right. The calendar, given the debates and how they're going to be operated, it's going to make everybody run a very different campaign, because they've got to get in the top 10 on the poll numbers to be included.
All right, and Ohio, an important state, but we're running practically out of time already. Julie, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, Carly Fiorina, who do you think?
Too soon to tell. Look, I still think Jeb Bush has the institutional support, but as David pointed out earlier, it's all riding on New Hampshire for Jeb Bush. He's not going to do well in Iowa. He's got to get out of New Hampshire in the top, really, as the winner of New Hampshire, maybe in the top 2. But Marco Rubio is in a strong position. He and Jeb Bush are competing for Florida, which obviously means that neither of them is the strongest candidate there. It's going to be down to the two of them. And look, Scott Walker is not to be discounted. Scott Walker, I think, has incredible momentum going into Iowa, and that can catapult him in places like New Hampshire, certainly South Carolina. Carly Fiorina has one element that she keeps talking about. She's a woman. She wants to contrast herself with Hillary Clinton. But the reality is, aside from being a woman, she's got a pretty dismal record in private business, as other Republicans have already pointed out, including Donald Trump.
Right.
So she's got a long road to go.
Going to have to leave it there. So short. Thank you both for joining us. Julie
Sure.
Roginsky and
Thanks.